when you look at the way these two teams have played and the teams throughout the Big 12, we came into this season with a clear cut Oklahoma's the best. Iowa State is the second best by themselves. And then who knows after that? It's probably Oklahoma, Texas, TCU. They'll kind of fight it out for third place. Now we've seen Iowa State stumble. We've seen Oklahoma not play well, but wins and losses are all that count, and they're 5-0 and atop the Big 12 at 2-0. So, but if we're just taking into consideration and evaluating the performance on the field, this has suddenly become more of a wide open race than anything we anticipated, and this would be the first just monumental game that's going to affect and impact the championship race.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Mark, and it's very interesting. As you mentioned, Iowa State came in as probably the second best team, but they've looked not terrible. They stumbled against Iowa, of course, and then just turned the ball over a lot against against Baylor down the stretch, and they lost that game. But yeah, it's wide open. Right at this point, I think you obviously have to look at Oklahoma, Texas, and then Oklahoma State as probably the three best. I mean, really just in terms of record right now. But all three of those teams have holes, and I thought going into last week, I thought based on the way West Virginia played that hey, maybe they're one of the better teams in the Big 12, and then they go and get beat at home
I
by
did too.
so it's hard to figure out, Mark. I mean, it's not any different than the rest of the country this year. Some of these teams are up and down from week to week. Don't really know what to expect. So yeah, no, I think this is obviously a huge game for for both teams. And if you're Oklahoma State, you struggled a little bit early on in the year. They've started to find their groove a little bit, playing much better defense. Spencer Sanders is taking care of the ball. Obviously, last week wasn't a good indication of that against Baylor, but he was taking care of the ball a little bit better. But you're Oklahoma State. You have Bedlam in Stillwater, but you still have to go to Texas. So they have some tough games coming up. But yeah, no, it's going to be an interesting race, and obviously this is going to go a long way in seeing one of these two teams making it to the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah, Oklahoma State's been far from dominant, but in terms of stringing together wins against quality competition, again, no kind of murderer's row, but nobody's done that. I always find it interesting when we get into these conversations about evaluating teams. At this stage in the season, nobody's really impressed with too many wins because there's only been a few games played. Therefore, you say, okay, well, they beat them. Well, if they beat them, who did they really beat to show that they're any good? And you play that game and you chase your tail across the nation trying to figure out who's beaten whom and which games really mean something. But I think by definition of what I term to be a quality win, I still consider, despite a few losses, Boise State and Baylor to be quality wins. Right. And Oklahoma State knocked off Kansas State. But again, it doesn't seem to matter who they are lined up against. They're going to beat them by one score or maybe two. It seems like they play pretty much the same game every week. But to their credit, Oklahoma State's 5-0. I did watch the cutdown version and got all the action in against the Baylor game. And I thought Oklahoma State clearly was the better team, but Spencer Sanders, he did his best in a few spots to try to give it away, but he made some plays with his feet and they got the job done. So this Oklahoma State crew, from the standpoint of who they're beating, it's impressive. The performances are, far from dominating, but it stands at 5-0. So interesting Big 12 race, much more interesting than I thought it would be. And that's a good thing for everybody but Oklahoma fans, I guess.